is looking around at this time of the Sermon on the Mount. He's about a year into his ministry, and he sees corruption. Huh, you don't say. I learned this new word, and I think it's a Greek word, entropy, not atrophy. Entropy is the result of something spinning out of control, so much so that it's hard to see. It's blurry, it's foggy, it's smoky, it's perpetual. And in this case, the corruption is precisely righteousness, which is what we're all called to do. If you recall, I gave a sermon not too long ago. What is righteousness? It's being who you were created to be. That's a lifelong process of discovery. In Jesus' case and in his time, what had happened is the Pharisees had got a hold of this righteousness and said, this is it. And if you don't fit into this box, you are not righteous. You are not one of us. You are one of them. And Jesus saw that and said, something ain't right here. And then he also knows there's a cover-up of truth in order to self-preserve that system by which was created. Very simply, you could call it religion if you'd like, in this case. Now, I shared with you that I watched, I'm watching the classics. Kids are out of the house. I got a lot of time on my hands. And I shared with you that if you haven't seen One Flew the Cuckoo's Nest, I do believe Jack Nicholson's character is light in the darkness. I mean, he brings life, joy, empowerment. That's all good. That's a good illustration. But I recently watched now a movie from 1962 called In the Heat of the Night. It's on the top 100, so I wanted to give it a look-see-loo. And wow, it is powerful, and I'd really encourage anybody to watch it. And I'm going to give you the plot, and then allow for your imagination to determine what that environment, situation would have been like. And so the plot is a hotshot police detective from Philadelphia, Virgil Tibbs, played by Sidney Poitier. He travels down to Sparta, not Tennessee, Sparta, Mississippi, and he's just looking to get another train. It's just a layover because I think he's going west. And in the meantime, Sparta, Mississippi experiences their first homicide in a long time, and somebody's dead. And there is Virgil Tibbs. He's waiting for his train at the train station, and they believe they found the killer. Who done it? And then it goes from there. So imagine being Virgil Tibbs in Sparta, Mississippi in 1962. Now, I just recently watched this movie, but I see a lot of parallels from that experience, and I wonder what Jesus would have experienced. And as he looked around and he saw the corruption and the cover-up, Jesus has a certain obligation to speak up and to stand up. Speak out and stand up. And then, now he knows his time is limited. Jesus already knows that. He came to die. So, he empowers his disciples. I know I'm going too slow, aren't I? Yeah? Okay. Let it soak in. You are the salt of the earth. Let that soak in. Now, oftentimes, salt is, in a lot of scripture, or I should say this, a lot of homilies, a lot of passages, a lot of sermons that you've heard, salt is flavor. I am here to tell you it's not just flavor, it's a preservative. I love going up to the Z-Bar Ranch on North 77 up by Strong City, if you've ever been. Spring Hill Ranch, that limestone mansion. Nobody? Nobody ever been there? Oh, you've got to go. Thank you, Letha. And so it's an old 1880s farmhouse, and part of the farmhouse, they have a curing house. And the curing house is a limestone building by which they would hang the meat to cure it. And you know what they would do to preserve that meat? They'd cover it in salt. That's how they did it in 1880. That's how they did it in Jesus' time. And so when he says, you are the salt of the earth, he's not just saying add a little flavor, be a little salty. He's saying that you are the preservative of his covenant. You. Now, when he says you're the preservative of, or you're the salt of the earth, the word he uses is geo. It's the Greek word that we get geography or, something of earth. Thank you. Thank you. Round, circle. It's physical. Thank you, Letha. I appreciate that. It's physical matter. And so God, and you can look back in Leviticus. I didn't know this, but salt is always a preservative of a covenant. Leviticus chapter 2, verse 13 says that make sure that all of your offerings are preserved with salt. In other words, if this is our offering today, he says, put a little salt on it, preserve it. Now, obviously, we don't need to do that, but what he's saying is when you are the salt of the earth, you are the preservative of the covenant. Just as Noah was himself, he was the preservative of the covenant of righteousness. Abraham, the person, the preservative of the covenant of faith. Moses, the covenant of the law. David, the covenant of priestly kingship. Jesus is the new covenant. He's doing something entirely new. God is. And he says, you will be the preservative of this covenant. This is great news for the woman that I was bedside with her. She's I'm going to tell you this. 100 years old. She is a preservative of the covenant just by being who she is. This is, again, coming full circle, what it means to be righteous. Now, I will tell you this. She hadn't been to church in 20 years. She hasn't served a community in 20 years. She was a member of a church for 60 years. So let's just do this real quick. So 20 years, you do your own thing. Carter, I think you still got to be a member. We still got to talk about that. But we're going to use Carter as an example. First 20 years of life, you're being young, and you're not really a part of a church. And then you choose to, and then for 60 years, you are a member. You're an active member of a church. You're preserving the covenant, and then you're 80 years old, and you start to slow down. And you're no longer an active member. But that doesn't do anything about the preservative. You are still the preservative of the covenant. You are the salt. That's powerful. Let that soak in. Don't just let it be a flavor. Let it preserve that covenant that God established with you. What is that covenant? Love. Love God. Be loved. And love others. But what happens if salt loses its taste? Now, the word there is morose. It's the same English word we have for moron. If salt is moronic, foolish, that's no good. We have been tasked with a covenant to love God, to be loved by God, to love God, and to love others. And take Lot's wife, for example. If you remember the story from Genesis 19, God made a covenant. And do you remember the wife? She's running in the direction of the covenant, but then she looks back. And what happens to her? You remember the story? She turns to a pillar of salt. She left the covenant behind, even though she was coated in it. What does it mean to be foolish with the covenant that God has established with you? Another way is the foolish person built their house upon the sand. You know that story, you know that song. I want to give now some examples of how we can dilute the preservative as salt. And now this is all just science right here. Because I read, well, how could salt be not effective, lose its taste and its flavor? Well, number one, it's just not enough. Not enough salt. Now, we know that it just takes a grain of mustard seed to have faith, and that's great, but we're talking salt now. Now, I want you to imagine, I made a brisket the other day, and it was a 7-pound brisket. And I wanted to tenderize it. I wanted it really good. I know my cooks out there. Imagine if I just took maybe a dash of salt, a pinch of salt. Is that enough? Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. It's not going to preserve. It's not going to do anything. What does this mean? You are a grain of salt, and you can accumulate grains of salt, and we are salt together. And together we can do a lot more. This is right here for those that say, I'm a Christian, but I don't need a family. I'm a believer, but I don't need others. One grain of salt, not going to do much. Second, watered down. I'm picturing that curing house at the Spring Hill, and there's meat hanging, and it's cured with salt, and then beads of water start to accumulate. If you're not tending to that, then it is diluted. And there's so many different ways by which we can dilute this covenant. It's not evenly spread. Here's one of my favorites, fat oxidation. Yes, fat oxidation. All right, so I'm going to go back to my brisket. And there was a layer of fat, like that. So, the recipe says, trim that down. Why? To maximize what you're attempting to do. Trim the fat. Because otherwise, salt on excess is rancid. Jesus says it would be easier for a camel to go through a needle, the eye of a needle, than for you to have all the excess that you're trying to bring to the kingdom. Trim the fat, the excess. Finally, contamination. These are all scientific ways by which salt might lose its flavor. I got to speed up, and I'm going to go to my concluding illustration. You are the light of the world. Now, Jesus uses the term geo for salt of the earth. He's demonstrating that we live in a physical world. But in that world, there are systems. The cosmos, the solar system, the atmosphere, the justice and economy, these are all human systems. And he says that you are the light of these systems. Now, I couldn't help but notice every time I'm going back to In the Heat of the Night. So we have here Virgil Tibbs is accused of murder. And they throw him in a cell with another person that was accused of murder. And what happens in this scene is Virgil begins to bring light to a dark system. It's corrupt, it's lost its way, and he brings light. I think they did that cinematically, if you see the light, if you can see that right there. But not only are we sometimes in a prison of injustice, maybe it's a prison of economy. And these are just passages in our liturgy of What does light do? Light feeds, clothes, shelters the needy. Brings light, life into otherwise darkness. Sometimes if we look at our other image here, you have our own prison. This is Chief Gillespie's own apartment. And he says, nobody's ever been in here before because he never lets light in. In other words, Chief Gillespie has his own prison that he has put himself in. And guess who brings light? Mr. Tibbs. That's what light does. That's what love does. That's what salt does. Brings light into otherwise darkness, corruption, corrosion, waywardness. I'm going to carry on with other ways that light is shown in the truth of systems. Light speaks against injustice and stands up to oppression. This is Isaiah chapter 58. You can read it for yourself. It's speaking to the nation of Israel. What Isaiah chapter 58 is saying is, Israel, if you want to be one nation under God, you have got to do these things. This is the baseline. This is the foundation. Without these things, there is no healing. Read it for yourself. When you do these things, then healing begins. If we do not do these things, Israel, Isaiah chapter 58, if we do not speak out against injustice and stand up to oppression, there is no healing. Entropy continues. Darkness will just continue to cycle. Sometimes I wake up and I think, who? God? And he says, you are the salt, the preservative of my covenant. You are the light to the world. Jesus concludes, and he says, in the same way as he's calling us as a nation, as a person, in the same way, let your light shine. Sometimes I wonder, how do I know if my light is shining? How do I know if I'm preserving the covenant? There's this little transition between the Beatitudes, which we read last week, and this salt and light, and I'm going to read it to you. There's 8 Beatitudes, and Jesus is speaking to the world, and he says, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He's speaking out to the world. And then he focuses once more to his disciples that are gathered at the Rock United Methodist Church and says, blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. I, right now, am just reading the scripture that has gone before us. Isaiah chapter 58. Please, read it. Psalm 112. How are we going to let our light shine? Well, at the risk of reviling, I'm not even sure what that word means, really. I don't think it's good. At the risk of people thinking bad about me, questioning my theology, wondering what's happening to David, I'm going to say and invite you to be light. What will that look like? I already told you what the scripture says. What will it look like for you? To speak out against injustice and to stand up to oppression. What does that look like for you? I know there's lots of ideas and thoughts and ways. Or maybe we're not experiencing entropy and everything's hunky-dory. I would like to invite you. I truly don't think I can make it, but I wanted to, at the very least, promote it. There is, well, maybe you can walk for peace. There's a gathering at the Island Park in Winfield on Tuesday, February 10th from 11 to 2 o'clock. Just show up, bring your light, be the salt, just be. We will conclude. Oh, yeah, we're going to conclude with song. But I had glow sticks for you guys. Darn it, I left them at home. Okay. And at this time, I was going to go around and give everybody a glow stick. So if you can picture a glow stick right now, and you know how the saying goes, when you buy the glow stick and the glow stick just comes straight out of the box, is it shining? No. You've got to crack it. You got to break it. You can't be light if you don't know brokenness. Back to in the heat of the night, only those who invited the light into their own darkness did light shine. Otherwise, it's just some external source and energy, and I don't want anything to do with it. Would you let the light shine in the darkness? That's when it's brightest.